Welcome to Rubberband Live, the Australian recruitment and talent acquisition vodcast and podcast. I am Eden Haddock, your host and the creator of Rubberband, the recruitment network for all. Let's go live. And we are live, and I'm just going to cheekily celebrate that we are live on LinkedIn today after a bug last time. So thank you everyone out there that was so patient last time when we had a technical glitch. Now, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I live and work on, the Wadawurrung and Dja Dja Wurrung people. I recognise their continuing connection to the land and waterways. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I'd like to extend this to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Today, I also want to thank Recruit Wizard, who are our partner for the event today. Anyone out there, Recruit Wizard is an Australian-owned recruitment CRM and ATS, which is loved by thousands of talent professionals right across the country. Thank you so much, Recruit Wizard, for your support. And yes, welcome, the AI and ChatGPT Masterclass with Jordan Betteridge, Steve Grace, and Katie James. Thank you so much for joining panel. How are you today?
Good, thanks, Eden. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Going good. Well, we're so excited to have you here, and this is a really popular session, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions coming through from the audience. Remember, if you pop your questions in the chat box in YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, they will come up, and we can see them. We'll try and address as many as we can. I'm amazed at seeing aloha from Hawaii. I'm seeing hello from Fort Lauderdale. There's people from all over the world here, so thank you so much for your support. Now, let's introduce our panel members. So we'll go around the room. If you could just provide a quick summary of who you are and a little bit about your career. We'll start with Jordan Betteridge. Welcome, Jordan.
Thanks, Eden. It's always good to see your face. My name is Jordan Betteridge. I am the CRO and CMO of Recruit Wizard. I'm also the founder of a boutique consultancy that focuses on brand and technology called Random Group. And I've been across the talent community for about, I think it's coming on 10 years now, just sort of helping many different recruitment agency owners and small business owners understand how technology can definitely boost their productivity and also help them tell their stories through their, the voice of their brand and using different tools that are emerging, such as AI.
Mm-hmm. Fabulous. And you're also our technology brains trust for the Rubberband community. So thank you for always being there for us, Jordan.
I'm doing my best.
You're amazing. And Steve, welcome, Steve. How are you?
Thanks, Eden. Very well.
That's great. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a bit of a summary about who you are and a bit about your career as well.
So I'll try and make it quick because I'm quite old. So I'm currently CEO and founder of the Nudge Group, specialist global recruitment agency that focuses on startups and scale-ups. So we recruit all over the world, lots of different countries, helping startup founders build their businesses. I also am the CEO of Balance the Grind, which is a media publication around how to live a better life and work-life balance advice, essentially. Prior to that, I had numerous different recruitment agencies in numerous different stages, which I have sold. And prior to that, I worked in recruitment. I think I've been in the talent community. Jordan, you said 10 years. I think I'm coming up to a quarter of a century, about 25 years now. Wow. So, long time.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for your support. We're so excited to have you here with all of that wealth of knowledge. And Katie James, my friend Katie James, who I have recruited with for a number of years in the past. So excited to have you here. Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself and a bit about your career as well.
Yeah, so I'm Katie. I work at Flybuys for our international audience. Flybuys is one of Australia's biggest loyalty programs, working with two of Australia's biggest retail groups. So the Coles Group and the Wesfarmers Group, so brands like Bunnings and Kmart and Target, which many of you might have heard of. And so, yes, so Eden and I have known each other for quite some years now, from when Flybuys first was established as a business. And when he talks about recruiting together, when we started at Flybuys together, it was about 60 or 70 people, and it's now about 500 people. And so Eden and I spent a good 2 to 3 years massively scaling the size of our technology and digital teams at Flybuys, which is what I look after. So I look after all of our member-facing channels at Flybuys. Prior to that, I've done a number of different digital marketing or tech roles across, some big brands in Australia. So places, so initially at Liquor at Coles, I worked for the RACV before that. And for anyone who is a Melburnian local, straight out of uni, I actually worked for the Queen Victoria Market in their marketing department, looking after their digital channels.
Oh, wow. And Katie, it's so great to have you here, because I think one of the traps that we fall into when we're having these conversations is, we're a recruitment and talent acquisition community, but to bring in a hiring manager and to be able to understand your opinion and your perspective is really valuable for our community. So I really do thank you for coming along today.
No
now, speaking of the community, we put a bit of a call out for some questions around AI, and specifically AI in recruitment. And I thought we'd start by addressing some of them and kind of treat it as a bit of a myth buster. So we'll go around the room. I've assigned one of these comments or questions or observations to each of you. So Jordan, if it's okay, I'm going to start with you. And this one that came through: AI will destroy the creative aspect of recruitment. Things like writing job ads, EVP marketing, etc. Can you bust that myth, or do you agree?
Wow. Destroy is a very big word.
Yeah.
My short answer is no, it won't. I think the truth is that AIs and machine learning technologies like ChatGPT, which is probably the underlying title of this session, they're tools they're like designed to augment and amplify human creativity, not replicate it.
Right.
The key here is to sort of go at it with the thought process that you'll be collaborating with another tool, not competing with it. Taking things like job ads, writing job advertisements, spec sheets, social ads, all that sort of stuff. And I'm seeing a lot of recruitment professionals in agency and internal, start to get a lot more creative with their advertisements. AI is kind of designed to handle the routine parts of the job, such as including required qualifications, job responsibilities, and benefits, where human creativity can kind of shine through, is in tailoring the ad to reflect the company's culture and that company's values, for example, and give the ad that sort of more compelling story that resonates with the desired candidates that we're looking for. EVP is a big thing that I'm constantly talking about, both internally at Recruit Wizard as we are growing as a business, and all of my clients, within the sort of VCMO work that I'm doing. EVP is becoming more and more important. And I guess in the realm of EVP for AI, it can sort of analyze and help you analyze sort of loads of different data to provide insights into what prospective employees value most. The information that can be then utilized by human recruiters to sort of craft those compelling EVPs, not just following suit to some businesses that are doing like the 4-day work week, or they offer your birthday off and stuff. They actually assist you by sifting through data. There's kind of an underlying trend going on already. It's about saving time and working with it in collaboration. And I think the whole point of it is it's designed to augment any of the creative aspects of your business. And we know that augmentation means to grow it, to change it, to make it, I think a very good friend of mine once said to think a bit wider when it came to creativity, and that's what augmentation does. So yeah, it doesn't aim to replicate the human touch. Rather, it's about combining the best of both worlds to create a more effective and efficient recruitment process through creativity.
Absolutely.
That's just my opinion.
No, I completely agree with you. I think, those data points to build an authentic EVP are incredibly important. And I agree with, thank you, Stefan Wellak, for your comment here. AI probably helps a lot of people out there who aren't creative by nature to really improve their outreach and ways of messaging. So I think that was 100%. A really good comment as well. Okay, so let's go to myth number 2. So Katie, this one's for you. This is an interesting one as well. So AI will completely replace talent screening conversations. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree, and I disagree for a couple of reasons. I actually think there's a good amount of overlap in this to some of the things that Jordan touched on as well. Which so you talk about creativity and the human side of creativity. Well, I also think that on this point you've got to think of the human side of connection and the importance of that connection. And I think interestingly on this point, because it's with me and being a hiring manager as well, a lot of the time I'm actually relying on this initial part that's being spoken about happening with the person that I have a relationship at my organization, someone like an Eden. And I just would say to the whole audience, don't underestimate how important that level of trust and reliability in your relationship with the various hiring managers in your organization plays in how they approach those conversations. I can tell you firsthand that Eden and I have hired hundreds of people together. And if Eden told me on the phone that he'd spoken to someone that was perfect for the job, I don't think there's a time that he had that wrong. And that means so much to me, right? And that's not to say there weren't other great people out there, and to the point of augmentation, that there wouldn't potentially be a role that it plays to help you get a greater list where you have so much choice, and that's a great problem to have. But relationships and human connection and the trust that comes with that play a really big role in how you build rapport in your internal teams, but then also with those candidates, right? Like there's an amount of connection that you need to have to move to the next step. The second part for me is to think about how much recruitment is not actually happening because of people taking the effort to go and hit apply now on a job in the first place. In exactly the same space, a heck of a lot of the great people that have ended up at our organization are because talent leads have gone out there into their networks and looked for the people that they know or asked for the people that they know. Now, I'm not saying that AI is not capable of doing some of that work for you, but at the end of the day, you're not talking about a completely linear model of augmentation where 100% of applications come through one channel, you're reviewing them in the same way, and then you're moving on to the next step. Sometimes you're actually out there yourselves actively seeking out people and building rapport to get them interested in the first place. And I think there's only so much that AI or machine learning can do to convince someone who's not actually in the market that they might actually be interested in chatting to you about a job. I think that in itself is also a human connection piece of many people get tapped on the shoulder about, would you be interested in this? If it doesn't have the right level of human connection and personal touch, I'm not sure your success rates of getting people to say, actually, yeah, I'd like to hear more about that role would be there when it's you pushing out there trying to get somebody's interest for something that you've got on offer.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Charlotte Hall, who said AI will support the efficiency to allow more time to develop those deeper connections. Absolutely. I actually agree. I actually completely agree. So, Charlotte, that's absolutely spot on. All right, well, let's go to number 3. Comment, myth. This one's for you, Steve. AI can completely remove bias from the recruitment process. What do you think?
I so wish it could. So there's been so much talk about unconscious bias, conscious bias in recruitment processes wherever you are in the world. And those biases vary. And I think, in relation to all of these 3 myths you're just talking about, I think a lot of it is they seem to come out of fear, these myths, and they come out of people thinking that AI is a conscious being, which of course it's not. And I think AI is essentially only a product of, initially, who develops it and codes it, and then secondly, who it interacts with and learns from. So the reality around bias, unfortunately, is not going anywhere. And this has been proven through, I think it was Amazon who created their own AI to deal with the enormous numbers of applications they have, particularly in the US. And unfortunately, it had the same bias as the same people had within Amazon, because that was who programmed it and that's who it learned from. So AI is really just a tool, like we've spoken about so many times here already today. It's there to automate, it's there to speed things up. It does help create creativity because, like someone mentioned earlier, if you aren't a creative person, because it's learned from so many others, it can help you become more creative. Yeah. Personally, I'm very dyslexic. I find it fantastic because it spells correctly as well. So it can really help me in terms of speeding things up. But around the topic of unconscious bias, that unfortunately will remain. And in some respects, unless you can expose that AI to everybody in the world, you can't remove unconscious bias, and that will always remain there. And to some degree, unconscious bias also comes, and this relates back to Katie's question as well, in terms of human connection. If you did remove all unconscious bias and it just put a whole bunch of people together, the chances of them actually getting on is incredibly slim. So we don't actually want to remove that bias. We just need to make sure that the bias is not very, what's the right word? Probably it's not so unfair, and it's not racist, and it's not sexist, and all the other ists that exist. But there needs to be an element of unconscious bias to create human connection, I believe.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I think in some ways it's removing it from potentially the screening process, but there's always going to be, we've all talked about it today in every answer, that human connection. So then we have to look at, how we form those human connections, or, to make sure that, those biases don't come into play, because they're there, they're natural, that's a part of life, and it's a part of meeting people. You do have preconceived ideas, and you need to address those through those conversations. So I think
you do. And I think, you know what, when AI starts employing other AI and we all stop working, no problem. There'll be no unconscious bias. But I think we're a fair way away from that. I don't think anybody on this podcast needs to worry about that happening anytime soon.
So not Terminator 2 yet? Not quite?
Not yet.
Oh,
there we go.
I knew someone was going to bring it up. I knew someone.
Oh, it had to be me.
I was waiting for someone to say the T word.
Yeah, I was looking in the comments looking for it, but it hasn't come through yet.
No. I was just beating them to it. Fantastic. Okay, well, let's talk about day-to-day working life. From your perspective, Jordan, how do you feel AI could make your day-to-day, or make someone's day-to-day working life more efficient or more effective?
I've actively seen it, and encouraging it too with a lot of our clients. It helps do a lot of the sort of mundane thinking for you. Once you get the handle, because AI is built out of it's. If you're a supplier, or you're a recruiter, you're used to getting a brief. You can't really work towards nothing. You can't go out there and find a unicorn candidate without any idea. If someone comes to you and says, "Oh, I've got 95 grand plus super and maybe a commission structure for a salesperson," go find one. And if you don't have the skill sets, you don't know what sort of companies they've worked for in the past and all that sort of stuff. There's no brief, which means it's going to be really, really hard. Yeah. Once you get used to briefing different AI tools, it can really, really speed up all of the mundane tasks of your day. Things like writing CVs in specific formats. One of our clients at Recruit Wizard does very frequent mailer apps to their different candidate networks. I'm not going to say the industry just to be a little bit more privacy conscious there, but typically in recruitment marketing from an agency perspective, I'm not going to speak for internal, but from a recruitment agency perspective, mailers and job mailers are very, very, they're either very successful or they're a total flop. And in this particular industry, they're very successful. And for 12 different teams in a business of maybe 25 different recruiters to go from taking a week to get all of their ducks in a row for the content to go into a mailer, it's a lot of time out of your day. So what AI is doing for them is helping them build out a structure. They've delivered a standard prompt that works. They input basic data, and then they can spit out a very structured and easy to absorb mailer, and then add the human factor to it, talking about that particular client, what their culture's like, and all that sort of stuff. So all the hard stuff, all the dot points, the salaries, the locations, all that sort of stuff just gets done in seconds. Yeah. And then all it is basically going out there and doing what talent professionals do and help infuse the relationship that they understand that they have with the client into that mailer, and then it goes out. So 12 different teams now go from taking a week to get their content out. It's now done in a day. So I can actually help get that mailer out at the end of the day. So many different teams, it's over 35 different audiences with tens of thousands of contacts. So it just helps simplify the mundane stuff, because marketing is hard. I'm speaking from a marketing perspective. It's hard because you got to put thought into it. If at least 75% of that is done, the rest is just creativity, and it's done so much quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a comment that came up from Stefan there around something that would have normally taken him hours without ChatGPT. And the example was internal policies and hiring manager guidelines that he was actually able to create within minutes an edit that would normally take him hours to do. So I think that's a really great example, Stefan. Thank you so much.
The interesting thing about that, Eden, is that when you're doing those policies, and I saw that comment from Stefan, I think, if you go back the last few years, there was always some way you could find a policy, right? You could find it online, or you could find it from a membership agreement, and that was great. And then you could use it, but then you'd have to edit it and change it and make it, in line with you. I think what I love about how AI does, and I'm sure Stefan's experienced this, particularly with us, we work with founders, right? We work with startup founders. They have no time and they don't know how to do these things. They can say, create me a policy, whatever it be, an HR policy, and it will create one. But then they can go back and say to it, make it sound more startup, make it sound more casual, make it sound more professional, make it sound more relevant to global, make it sound more local. And it just does it. That's the part where the speed's coming, because you could always get base documents. That was the easy part. But then you have to spend almost as long rewriting those base documents as it took you to write them in the first place. Now you can just literally verbally say, I want you to make it like that. And bang, hey, presto, it's done. That's where the real time saver just flies through things. It's incredible.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, look, as HR professionals, let's face it, I mean, the policies we were writing weren't ever written from scratch anyway. We tended to go out there and look at best practice and form some Frankenstein version of it with all the different policies that we were gathering, and then we would make it our own. And I mean, AI is really just replicating what we were doing, but just making it much more efficient, because you're not having to reach out to everyone asking for their version of a policy. I think that's just the way it's always worked, right?
Well, I think the other thing is that you could go and Frankenstein together a great policy, but then actually a heck of a lot of the outputs that come off the back of that policy, you're reliant on other departments and teams to then deliver consistently, and it falls at that step too. So, and when I'm talking about that, is I'm thinking about, like, how many times have you had a hiring manager come to you and say, I've got this job, I need to get it to market tomorrow, and you're like, great, where's the PD? And one doesn't exist yet, right? And it's such a small thing in the scale of it, but it has such a flow-on effect when you don't have it there. And so you then got, say, as soon as a startup scales, once they've got multiple different departments, you've got multiple different PD writing styles, and you've got different spins on stuff that actually needs to be the same and quite consistent. So even if you get that first part of admin done, if you can't then bring that across the rest of the organization in a structured and consistent way that's efficient, you just end up with more versions of where it keeps deviating, right? You talk about you want everyone in the organization to be on the same goals, and then you've written that goal completely differently in everyone's PDs. And it's those little things where it's like, this isn't a scary thing that's going to replace you. This is actually something that's going to help you work together and create like a consistent approach to what success looks like for your organization.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's a really great example, and I think we've all been in that position that we're constantly chasing hiring managers to help us craft those PDs to get the job out to market. I mean, I want to stay with you just for a little bit longer, Katie, if that's okay. I suppose from a hiring manager perspective, like what other things would it do to make your life a lot more efficient and effective, I suppose, when you're working with the recruitment team?
Like, honestly, like, a heck of a lot of it is in those kind of steps, right? It's the upfront tasks that are laborious as an individual that you struggle to find time for, but they're actually very meaningful to the person on the receiving end of them. So if you think about all of the people within your teams, everybody wants a PD that they actually understand and that means something to them. And sometimes that seems quite ironic in the context of what it took to actually try and get one done just so that you could keep moving. So PDs is a big one for me, right? Like PDs, and it's simplifying that process for production, but in a quality way, right? Because they do matter to the people that are receiving them. I do think there's like space in the job ads in that process. But then for me, it's also, I think that there is more that could be done in the automation of the recruitment steps that actually allows us time to spend more of our energy properly reviewing the candidates that come through and the time that's going on in those. So I think because of all these steps that happen and all these things that need to happen, it's also what leads to conversations before you've even started of going, well, how many people maximum do you want to have to review the CVs of, and how many do this? So you're constantly making trade-off calls of how many people you will consider based on how much time you have available. available, rather than the question being, how many great candidates do we have that we really should talk to? I know, sorry about my cat. This is going to happen.
Oh, no,
What cat?
I not
I
be
didn't see
hearing
that.
that.
Never apologize for a cat.
So that's probably there's probably I need to think about it further into the specific parts. But what I would want, Eden, is to look at it and go, in the 100% of time that's available for this process, I would prefer 80% of it to be dedicated to talking to the people who might end up in your team, and or talking or reviewing or understanding the people that might end up in your team. And I feel like we don't get to give enough of that time, right? Like and sometimes we'll be saying no to a conversation or a CV review, and we might be missing an absolute brilliant person. And we're not saying no because they're not the right person. We're saying no because we're out of bandwidth to review any further. And so it's that, like, how much of the manual labor can be taken out in a properly automated way that allows your energy to go to reviewing, right? Even the simplest things, Aiden, of like some of the tools, because we don't invest enough energy in setting them up correctly, the amount of clicks that are involved to get to a CV in the first place is time taken away from actually reading it and understanding whether this person is right for the job. And then probably the second one for me is that so much is still focused on old school measures of a CV and a CV and a cover letter. And for many people, right, if you've gone out and found someone who you think's perfect for a job and they've been in their current role or organization for many years and they don't have an up-to-date CV, because let's be honest, none of us are doing home hygiene every month, updating our CV to make it current, and you're asking them to take the time to update their CV in that moment so that you can review it properly. There's probably a better way to find out from that person what you need to know to work out whether you want to have another conversation with them. And so I think there's something that can be done in that space, is to just change actually how we find out the information we need to about a candidate in the first place to then make the decision to have a conversation. I'm not saying CVs are done, but I just sometimes I think our expectations on people, particularly when we've tapped them on the shoulder to have produced this beautiful CV themselves by hand, is unreasonable in the context of what we've asked of them, and therefore what we actually really need to know to go to the next step.
100%. I think CVs are outdated personally, and I hate writing them. Writing my own, I mean, I read them all day long, but writing my own is the hardest task. And I think all recruiters say that. Like, it is such a laborious task to do.
Maybe you could do a very short version of interview one questions as the application process in the first place, and see what people's answers are to the things that actually matter to your job, and make a call off the back of that, right? And you could automate that kind of process. You could put the right human-centered language at the front of it in terms of why we're doing it this way, but say to someone, we don't need to see your 10 years. We can look at that on LinkedIn. Just answer these couple of questions for us about how you'd approach X, Y, Z, and Y. And maybe that's something that you could do in an automated way that changed the way you then built a connection with that person.
But now, I mean, AI can, I mean, ChatGPT specifically can create a CV for you with very minimal input from you. Jordan, I'll start with you. What is your opinion of those AI generated CVs? Do you think it changes the perception of candidates, or does it have a risk of changing that perception of candidates? What are your opinions?
It's about perception, really. I think AI-generated CVs can be seen as both an advantage and a challenge at the same time in any recruitment process. I mean, on one hand, they can ensure that there's a level of standardization. In terms of structure, specifically when you're presenting CVs as well to clients from an agency perspective, which is helpful. But on the other hand, AI-generated CVs would lack a personal touch that you can't replace. CVs, I wouldn't say, are my strongest suit. I'd definitely say that, again, it's just about getting the baseline sort of mundane parts of the CV put together, and it's how you brief AI to construct that, and how much time you're willing to spend with that AI for it to get to learn who you are as well. Because I mean, using a chat feed in ChatGPT, just because you've gotten the answer doesn't mean you can't go back to that chat feed and continuously educate it. If you've got a pro account as well, you can go back and add things that you think about later and constantly regenerate it until you get it to the point where you're very happy with it. Yeah.
It's interesting though. I mean, I think we, in the talent and recruitment space, we're putting a lot of emphasis on what AI means for us. And we're talking to Katie about that as a hiring manager as well. But I think the opportunity that it presents for candidate experience, because let's face it, I mean, we all know applying for a job is hideous. It's not an enjoyable experience. It is very, the onerous tasks that you have to do. You have to write a CV. You have to go through those screening questions. So do you see, I might ask you, Steve, I mean, do you see if a candidate on the other side is using AI to generate the CV for them? What is your opinion on that? Do you think that is a potential problem? Would it change the perception of the candidate in your mind? Or do you think, who cares? Use AI, make your experience easier.
So AI-generated CVs are just a modern version of when you used to go to a resume writing company, right?
Yeah.
And they all look the same. And I don't like them. But I think that's a personal thing. But I always look at someone's LinkedIn more than I do their resume. LinkedIn is the best database in the world. It's self-updating. It's written usually by the person. I mean, it's a short version, and then you can sort of delve into the depths later. I think there are some instances where you need resumes. I think there are certain jobs where they're important, and I think there are certain jobs where they're not so important. So there isn't a right or wrong answer. Personally, I don't like them, but it doesn't make me view that candidate any differently. What I do view is the information that's on there. I don't care if it's blue, green, big letters, nice font. That doesn't, honestly, it doesn't come down to that, because ultimately a resume is a marketing document. It's like a concert ticket. If it's got the right information on it, gets you through the door to have a chat, right? Or it gets you through the door to watch the band. Once you watch the band, it's about the experience you have with the band. It's not about what the ticket looked like. Once you get a resume and you start talking to a recruiter or a client, it doesn't matter what the resume looks like. And I think people need to think of it more like that. And they need to think more about the content than what it looks like, whether it's standardized, not standardized. Everyone's going to have their own opinions on that. It's going to vary massively. I think the most important thing is that they have the right information on there. They don't just have what they're responsible for. They make sure they have achievements. They make sure they tell you what they actually did. It's great knowing what you're responsible for, but we need to know what you did. It's simple things like that, which any recruiter or any how to write a resume article, there's millions of them, will tell you. Don't stress too much about that. It's like the policy documents. You can say to the AI, change it like this, change it like that, change it like this. And there was a comment in the comments earlier, and I think it was Kayla, who said, are we going to have word for word adverts if we do it for adverts? I don't think we are. There it is. You see, I don't think we are, because I guess recruiters have done that anyway. The lazy recruiters cut and paste job specs and job ads. We've all seen them. They look awful. The recruiter should be shot in the head. What they do is tailor it. I mean, all job descriptions have a base information, and then you get maybe 1, 2, or 3 really important things from the client. That's what needs to be in there. So you can create a base advert, Kayla, and then you just add the 3 things that are never in the job description anyway into your ad, and hey presto, you've got a different ad. Same thing with the resume. So it doesn't bother me. I think if it's going to save people time, just do it. But at the end of the day, just put some effort in.
Yeah. What if you flip the idea on its head? Because the interesting thing, what you said, Steve, you mentioned I look more at LinkedIn, but for many candidates, right, LinkedIn is just the new version of the laborious thing that they need to keep up to date that they
But it's
don't
shorter.
pay enough
It's much
attention
shorter.
to.
It's not as long.
Much shorter. But flipping the idea on its head, right, at the end of the day, some sort of CV tweaking is more about the organization receiving it and reading it than the other way around. What if the idea here was actually more that as organizations, particularly large organizations, we took people's CVs, we put them through some sort of automated process that simplified them for the organization and its expectations of what one looks like, put it back in front of a candidate and said, hey, this is what we've summarized this into, this is what we've summarized this into as relevant to our hiring manager. Is there any really key things that are missing from this that you desperately want us to know about you? Add them here and it's done. And so, because to your point, I'm the same as a hiring manager. I don't care. Use automation, because I think CVs are old and outdated and don't necessarily give us what we need. But I do think maybe there's something that could be done that could have us as an organization lead the path that says to a candidate, regardless of how you produced your CV, here's what we've taken out of it that's important to us. Here's one more chance to tell us something else you want to know.
I think that's the interview process, though, isn't it, Katie? I mean, I think you're right, but I think that's kind of that's done almost verbally. I almost think the ability to understand a job ad and read it and read between the lines and see what a client wants and then add that into your resume is a skill set that you want in an applicant. And so people who don't do that, they're applying for 500 jobs, boom, 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 boom. The people that do that, they really care about that job and want that job. So, and then that process you can do verbally. I mean, I think what you're saying, you could automate that for very large scale recruitment. It could be great. But I do think that's done verbally. I still think the verbal part is so important, as we talked about earlier. AI is not taking over. We still need that human connection part.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But
you could get CVs into a better standard for people to review internally. That's like I'm putting my hiring manager on, right? You could get CVs into a consistent format that makes sense to me. And to your point on the people that are applying for 500 jobs, that'll be really obvious because those people won't reply to the response that says, hey, this is what we've done to your CV. Is this good or is there anything else you want to say, right? They're not even going to interact at that stage. No. So you're already going to get some level in those parts. And the key thing it's going to give is the ability for the person who's then reviewing those CVs and saying, yes, these do or don't tick the boxes, hopefully a better, more consistent articulation across all CVs of whether someone has the skills you're expecting or not when you go to talk to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, I've had a question come through. Now, I don't have a lot of knowledge around it. I've listened to a podcast about it. Does anyone have, I'll just pop it up, an opinion on People GPT? Has anyone encountered it? Does anyone know much about it? How about maybe you, Jordan? Do you have an opinion on it?
Was that from Charlotte? Yes. Charlotte put the question up in the group chat a little while ago, and for the lack of a better statement, I lost a lot of sleep over trying to understand it. Since then, I kind of dove straight into it. I think from what I know, and I'm just going to share my experience. I'm not going to give my opinion. My experience is that it's basically it's ChatGPT to look over LinkedIn profiles. There's a connection there where the bot goes through all different social profiles, different website opportunities, different media publications, and tries to find specific people with specific skill sets in specific locations. At the moment, it's very baseline technology. I paid for a trial. I'm more than happy if someone, Charlotte, if you wanted to jump on, I'm just doing a public call out there. Charlotte, if you wanted to jump on a screen share, I'm more than happy to go through it on my premium account that I paid for. I just bought it for a month and then canceled it immediately just so I could get a trial because there is no trial at the moment. It's all credit based. Some of the results I saw though were pretty bang on, and a lot of the results I saw were completely irrelevant. I still believe that using technology to source for candidates, and I know this isn't the direct question, but the best way to source candidate profiles is one, through your CRM and your ATS. And that's not a plug. That's just me from a sales perspective. I use HubSpot. I've used many different things like Salesforce. Yep. If your database is clean, you should be able to search profiles and information on past candidates or professionals that you've pre-qualified. The second is obviously LinkedIn Recruiter, and then you've got tools like Seeks, Talent Search, and all that sort of stuff. They're a lot more accurate and they're a lot more up to date. That's just my experience. I'm not sold on it. I don't think it was worth the money that I spent on it yet, but it's still very early days. And I've actually reached out to the CEO and co-founder, letting him know that I'm sort of representing a talent industry in Australia that's quite interested by it. And he's literally, my email's here. He said, I'm going to send you as much information as I can. So as soon as I know about it, I'll share, but that's my experience. I don't think it really necessarily has much of a place at the moment. Again, very, very
we
basic.
can do a whole session on it next time round, Eden. We can have a people.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm with Jordan.
People GT.
It's too new. It's too new. I don't think it's had the time. It's a Y Combinator startup, isn't it? And they're usually pretty good at picking the future. But I think it's got a long way to go. But I'm fascinated. I hope it works. God, I really hope it works. But right now, it's not. I don't think it is. But I think I had a mixed results with it. We all tried it, but I think it will come. And again, I think we'll just see. It depends how people use it and what it learns and all that kind of stuff. It's like all AI, which is what we're talking about here. AI is only as good as what it can learn from the people that are interacting with it. And that's what will hopefully make people GPT. As we all know, there's a lot of really bad recruiters out there. If they're the ones interacting with it, it's not going to work at all. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just another comment on that. Sorry, you go, Eden.
No, you're right, Jordan. All good.
Steve, you made a really good point about AI being as good as the people that made it and invented it earlier. Talent, from my technical understanding of the talent industry, from a technology company's perspective, talent is just a gigantic data pool, and data is the most precious commodity other than time on the planet at the moment. People that are businesses that are aiming to help simplify the talent industry through things like People GPT or AI and any different aspect. I mean, there's like so many different things out there at the moment. Everyone's giving it a go. If those people that are building it don't have the experience like what Steve has, and I can't speak from I did recruitment for 6 months and I just sucked at it. There I go. I just said it publicly. I hated it. I couldn't do it. I'm a creative by nature. I like to use my hands and I like to, test and sort of poke things. But if it's not built by people that understand the process and understand, all of those, human aspects of talent management, it's not going to go very far. So if you're watching, what's his name? maybe look at who's in your engineering team, and hopefully you guys can bring something out to the table that will simplify everything.
That's a good point, Jordan.
No, I completely agree. Now let's continue. Let's look to the future. There's been a lot of discussion around legal implications with AI. And we're talking the potential there with People GPT. So I'm keen to hear from the panel, and you're all technologists. So what do you predict the next iteration will be, or how do we prepare for what's coming? What do you see coming in your crystal ball? I might start with you, Katie. What do you think the future looks like?
That is a big question.
It is a huge question. Sorry.
And I think I'm going to be the slight. I think I'm going to be the slight. Actually, no. I was going to say Debbie Downer, but I'm not. It's not this. I actually think at this point we're still at the early stages of greater mass acceptance and adoption of the things that have become available recently. Because in everything we're talking about here, right? Even everyone's mentioned it, and it's very, very true. On all of these things, there will be good versions of this being done and there'll be bad versions of this being done. But one of the biggest problems, I would say, and this is particularly in Australia, I'm not sure about some of these other global markets, is a heck of a lot of nothing being done. And so for me, I think we're reaching this critical point. And I think if you look at Australia right now and where the job market has been and how many roles there have been in these kind of spaces and the inability to even find enough people to do these things, we're hitting this crux where it can't keep going the way it is, right? People need these solutions now, and they're such an important part of their personal life, right? We automate all sorts of things. We create shopping lists that we share with our family. We do all of these things in our personal life that we have used automation technology to make simpler. I think we're all getting to the point where not having that available at work is beyond frustrating. Like it's the one part of our life where these things aren't available is that. So for me, I don't think the right now is necessarily about what more can be done that's out of scale thinking of what we've done, and actually just better integration of the solutions that exist. Because a lot of what happens here is great ideas, great conversations, great tools that could be used that are then poorly implemented in organizations. And we either use about 5% of what they're capable of doing and it sits there for ages. We try to set and forget and move on to the next thing. Or it just never gets off the ground and something doesn't get renewed. So for me, I think actually we should be excitedly embracing that we actually see really good examples of like automation and AI in recruitment processes widely available for all the jobs we apply for. And that would be a significant success story because we would know that we're all giving our time and energy to the human elements of the process that really matter.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. And that's been the theme throughout the chat box today as well. The importance of removing those everyday Monday tasks so we can form deeper connections with the people we're interacting with.
Don't wait for whatever version 2 of what People GPT can do, because you'll be so far behind if you're still waiting to do that as your first step. That's my thing. It's like you've got like businesses have to start embracing what's available now and then iterate on it. Stop waiting for, I'll just wait for the version that can do X, Y, Z. It's like you need to do something because your people.
I think you're the future, Eden. I think you're the future because you're helping dispel the fear. And,
well, look,
a lot of this was about fear, right? We started with myths. This is no different than people not wanting to do banking on their phones. Does anyone go into a bank now? That wasn't that long ago. The fear around online banking on your phones and paying on your phones. I remember the first time I went out without my wallet. I was terrified. Like, this was only a few years ago. We need to dispel the fear of AI before we can ever really take it forward and embrace it. And you're doing that right now.
Well, and I mean, look, we've faced a lot of these fears during COVID as well. We should be able to be a little bit braver. I mean, I remember when we all went into lockdown and we all went, oh my gosh, how the hell are we going to hire people because we can't interview them face to face? Interviewing them via Zoom, we're never going to get a human connection. We're never going to understand who the candidate is. Hey, who's interviewing face to face now, right?
I did one last week, first one in about 9 months. I was so excited. I didn't know what to wear. It was a whole new experience almost.
But again, we are scared of change, and I think that's really been the big thing with AI. I know when I first used ChatGPT, I just thought, and I'll make the joke again, Terminator 2, and got all, panicky about it, right? But you've got to embrace it. I think Katie and Steve, you're absolutely right, and we need to take that first step and get over the fear. What do you think, Steve? What else do you think is coming? Have a look in your crystal ball for us. What's the future of this look like, and what can we do right now?
Well, firstly, if I can get a crystal ball in the future, that would be great. I think
jumping on Amazon.
Yeah. I think what's coming is I think you're going to see everyone interacting with AI and becoming very comfortable with it. Then you're going to see a whole bunch of people hacking it, and then we're going to have to find a way around that. And I think you're going to see this continuous battle, I guess, of trying to get ahead of the technology. Humans by nature want to beat technology. It's just in their psyche, right? So if they feel that a technology is taking something over, they're going to try and find a way to get around it. So I think we're going to see a real disruptive period before it settles down, and then it just becomes part of the norm. So I think the next 2 years maybe are going to be all sorts of things, lots of headlines on the Today Show that don't have any backing and all that kind of normal stuff that you see. And then eventually it will just settle into all of our processes. And I think we'll all get quite comfortable with it. And I think it will save enormous amounts of time. That's not just in talent and recruitment. I think that's across the board.
Yeah, agreed. And from you, Jordan, final words, final predictions, final advice, crystal ball, what do you reckon?
For things to come, I think it kind of like Katie and Steve have definitely covered off a lot of how I feel about it. But I think to answer it directly, a lot of failure in terms of technology is coming. A lot of trial and error. If you look at when Tesla released their public patents for their, dual and single engine motors for electric cars, so many businesses went out there and tried it to become part of the hype and failed. I think the only way to actually see what's coming next is actually be a part of it. There's a lot of people that I've met personally that are avoiding it because they don't understand. For anyone out there that scrolls on their phone on Instagram Reels or TikTok at night for 45 minutes, I can promise you that if you put 45 minutes in a day and replace that with a bit of self-education and just test it out, that's what's next. Is how you'll be able to interact with that new tool. It's just, don't be afraid of something that you haven't tried yet.
I think
Sally, lots and lots of failure is coming.
I think, the session today, Sally Woodall, thank you so much for your comment. Agree totally. ChatGPT is a tool to be embraced. Don't think of it as a replacement. Embrace it as a tool to open up your creativity and as a tool to save time. And I think that really has summarized the conversation that we've had today. We are out of time, so I wanted to thank the panel, Jordan, Katie, and Steve. We could talk for a couple more hours, and I think we may come together again and see whether some of those predictions have come true and see where we are in a few months, because it's moving at the speed of light. Thank you, everyone from around the world that has joined today. It's just been so uplifting to see so many different comments and opinions and observations within the chat box. Remember, all previous episodes of Rubberband Live are available on YouTube. You can find all those details on rubberband.com.au. We also stream all previous episodes via Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you search for Rubberband Live, you'll find it very easily. Thank you very much, panel. And I want to keep talking. I'd love to keep talking, so I hope I can pull you all back together again soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, Eden.
Thanks, Eden.
Thanks,
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good day. Take care.